It's time for This Week in WordPress, episode number 282, entitled Standing on the Shoulders of Giant Mice. It was recorded on January the 15th, 2024. My name's Nathan Wrigley and I'll be joined by three fine people today. First up is our co-host this week, that is Jess Frick. I'm also joined by Tim Nash and Paul Halfpenny. It's a WordPress podcast, so guess what? We're going to talk about WordPress. First of all, we have quite a long discussion about the year in core in 2023. We look into which parts of the world contributed, which countries also had the highest representation of employees and sponsors and all of that kind of stuff. And then we move on to the WordPress Accessibility Day. They've already started requesting team members, so you can get signed up for that. Meetup, the organisation which runs all of the booking and the calendars and lots of the organisation behind WordPress meetups, that has been taken over by a company called Bending Spoons. What does that mean? We'll talk about that. Global sponsors have been announced. There's several new ones in this tranche, but they're all going to be helping the WordPress project in the year 2024. The plugin review team, we have a discussion about the fact that in the year 2024, they're trying to reduce the amount of time it takes to get your plugin into the WordPress repo. Kinsta have a new rebrand. It puts WordPress back in the picture for that company, but it's quite an interesting design, as you will be able to hear. Pascal Birchler and I did a podcast over on WP Tavern, and we discussed his new and really seemingly amazing contributions to getting images updated and uploaded into different formats, and that's all happening inside of the block editor. We also talk about security. Tim lays out some security things, best practices for you. And finally, we talk about, well, accessible farting. There's no other way to describe it. It's all coming up next on This Week in WordPress. This episode of the WP Builds podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more at go.me/WP Builds. Hey, hello. I'm in a ridiculous mood today. I don't know why, but I am. And I just had some fire bricks delivered whilst the commercial little interlude was going on there. So I'm a happy man. I now have fire bricks. It's minus ridiculous in the UK. I want my fire lit.
What is a fire brick?
Oh, okay. So I've got a log burning stove, and the little bricks which protect the outer casing, they snapped, they broke, they got too hot. I like it hot. And so we got them replaced, but they arrived just now and I was bricking it in case. Oh, see what I did there. Oh, that was so good. Oh, Tim's shaking his head. I was nervous that it was going to be arriving when we were in the show. Anyway, that's apropos of absolutely nothing. This is This Week in WordPress, where we talk about fire bricks and you too, it seems. I'm joined by three guests today. Firstly, and I keep getting picked up on this, we have these co-hosts, we have these people who come back time and time again. And I keep talking about them as guests because I forget. And so I'm going to be very mindful of getting it right. So firstly, Jess Frick, who is joining us today for the, 400th time or something
like that. Give or take.
It's quite a bit. But Jess is the Director of Operations for Pressable. She's an iced tea connoisseur, a proud member of the Post Status and WP Minute communities, and, as we've just found out, a novice Firebrick user. But
yes, I'm American, but I am willing to learn.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure that one implies the other, does it?
Well, Firebrick isn't really like a term that we use here.
Okay, right, okay. All right.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you joining us today. Down there, we've got Sir Tim Nash. How are you doing, Tim? You see,
I haven't been knighted yet.
Yeah,
there's still time.
Yeah. No. Tim's been on many times before. He's a security. What are you? Because your bio says bio coming soon.
Well, if you hit refresh.
Oh, really? Is it that simple? Okay. It says Okay, great. Yeah. Tim is a WordPress. Look how the internet works. That's brilliant. I didn't know you could do that. Tim is a WordPress security consultant and a professional. This is great. A professional Doom speaker who is available to help secure your sites. He even promises not to sigh too often. Is the temptation when fixing people's sites to sigh a lot then when you see what is to you a rookie error?
No, I try not to sigh. People have this perception that because I primarily do site reviews, people have this perception that I must sit there and just be there going.
Yes.
The reality is,
Yes.
it's not like that because I just want to help people. So I try not to sigh. I try not to leave them in a position where they're feeling bad because all people, even if it's a mistake everybody makes, everybody's making it for a reason.
Yeah, well, that's true. Do you ever sit there with your fingers like that, sort of,
Only once. There was
Okay.
this one time where I had a client who was really. Most people are lovely people, and most most people get on board with their security review because they want their site to be secure. But I had this one dev team who really they took it personally, everything. Very antagonistic and very sure of themselves. So when we were when they were like, this can't do this, we know better. And there was this moment where it's like, yes, but the admin account on your website says otherwise. The one with my name on it. And it's one of the very few times I've ever done that and with any sort of joy at that point of like, yeah, no, you're wrong.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than somebody smug coming in and telling you everything that you've done wrong.
And I try desperately not to be that person.
Well, speaking of smug, no, I don't know why. I don't know why that came out of my mouth. I'm in such a strange mood today. The delightful Paul Halfpenny, how are you doing? Third and
thank you very much. Very well. Thank you.
Really nice.
Yes.
He's sporting a brand new little moniker there. It says PersonalizeWP. We'll get to that in a little bit, but there's a new product being launched. Paul is the CTO of a WordPress agency called Filter and the founder of PersonalizeWP. As I said, we'll see that later. He loves Disney and has just returned from his latest trip to Orlando, where he rang in the new year at Epcot. Nice. Yeah. And was propelled at high speed on the Tron and Guardians of the Galaxy rides. Tell me this, right? How long do you have to queue to get onto such rides? Or can you pay to circumvent the queue?
Yeah, there's a thing called a lightning lane, and you can pay a lot of money. So we did, like, the Tron rides just opened, and it was the first year. So we got on the virtual queue, and that took about an hour and a half after waiting, all day for your group to be called. And then that took an hour and a half. So the next time we went back to Magic Kingdom, I spent $80 for the four of us to go on it. It took about 5 minutes.
Nice.
So that was a massive improvement.
Yeah, I could. And speaking of people totting, I can imagine what that feels like as you walk down the lightning queue and all of those people who've been stood there for 4 hours are.
It's not good, but like the ride, then because the ride's quite short, it does actually feel like you're in and out in 10 minutes, which means that there's a little bit of, I feel like I'm missing out.
What the heck happened there? Disney just took me to the cleaners.
Absolutely took me to the cleaners. And
did you know that Mickey Mouse, I think it's Steamboat Willie, some particular variations of Steamboat Willie has fallen out of the purview of Disney, and I believe that certain examples of it can now be copied. So that's going to be my logo from this episode forward.
Yeah, you've got to do it different. Do you remember the Winnie the Pooh horror movie last year?
Oh,
because
I don't,
Winnie the
that's
Pooh
brilliant.
fell out of copyright. So they still can't use like the Disney-eyed version, Disney-fied versions of Winnie the Pooh. So it had to be like Winnie the Pooh's a serial killer or something. I didn't want to go there.
In hours of going out of copyright, the same people did the Mickey Mouse version.
So
version. Important to clarify that if it was the Mickey Mouse version, that's still in copyright.
Oh, okay.
The Willy version that just looks oddly similar.
I was listening to a podcast and they said, and they actually, I couldn't see it because I was listening to it, but they had it on the screen. There was something called Mickey Mouse, but without the E, so MICKY Mouse, which came out 1 year before, which Disney himself just basically stole.
No.
and then patented up the wazoo when it became really successful. His variation, presumably because of the amazing things that you could do with animation at the time, became really successful. So standing on the shoulders of, well, mice in this
Giant
case.
mice.
Yeah, really
it's
big.
standing on the
mice.
shoulders of lawyers.
That's the
Yeah.
episode name already. Standing on the shoulders of really big mice. Right, we've used up a quarter of the show or something just introducing each other. Let's do the usual bits and pieces. Firstly, if you are joining us in the comments, I thank you very much. That's really great. The easiest way to direct people is send them here, wpbuilds.com/live. You can use YouTube comments. You need to be logged into Google, or if you actually search inside the actual video player, top right, there's a little live chat button. You don't need to be logged into anything, which is quite nice. If you're using Facebook, we won't know who you are unless you go to wave.video/lives/Facebook. We just get an anonymized version. But very nice to have you with us. Jose, he's saying howdy. Rob Cairns is joining us. Happy Monday, he says. Elliot Sowersby from just down the road in Bridlington saying hi. Pete Chineri, I'm guessing in Spain, but I could be wrong. Cameron Jones, it's like 4 a.m. in Australia, but he's joining us nevertheless. Appreciate it. And I'm so sorry, Estavio. He's liking, but thank you. And Peter Ingersoll, as he always does, joining us to say what the weather's like in Connecticut. And it is currently minus, oh, that's brutal. It's minus 6 degrees centigrade, 21 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. It's about -1 where I am, but
Yeah.
that's bad enough. Okay, right, let's crack on, shall we? Let's talk about, okay, I've got 2 things on at once. That's what that was all about. So let's get on with the WordPressy stuff. Firstly, a bit of self-promotion. I hope you don't mind. This is our website, wpbuilds.com. If you want to keep up to date with what we do, just put your name, or rather your email into that little box, and we'll send you 2 emails a week when we produce new content. This will go out, repurposed as a podcast tomorrow morning, and then we produce an actual podcast on Thursday. And big thanks to GoDaddy Pro for keeping the lights on over here. Really appreciate it. We've got a little schedule page. It's at WP. Well, apparently we don't. Oh, yeah, we do. We have a schedule page over at wpbuilds.com/schedule. It tells you what we're doing each and every week. And Peach is on the call. And look, I'm going to be joining forces with her this Wednesday at 3 p.m. We're going to be doing our monthly UI UX show. And on the following day, I'm going to be talking with Sabrina Zidane all about speeding up your WordPress websites. If you go to any of these, if you just click on it, it gives you a bit of information about what it is, and then you can put them in your calendar so that you can join us live. They're all at wpbuilds.com/live. Okay, and finally, another page which apparently needed to be loaded. This is our little demo series archive. We just wound up a webinar series with a really nice chap called Leonardo or Leo Lozovic, all about his Gato GraphQL plugin. You can see there's 5 episodes. They're not necessarily in order, but you should really go check it out. If you fancy extending what WordPress can do and you're into GraphQL, or if you're just curious about manipulating data on a very, very massive scale, have a look at his plugin. It's really good. And you can see that on our demos archive. You'll be able to find that right there. Okay. All righty, let's go through this then. This is the year in Core 2023. I don't know if it's the same person that does this each year, but each year somebody writes a post similar to this where they break down the stats, things like contributing to WordPress over the year 2023, in this case, the year prior. And there's some little caveats around where the stats come from, but we don't need to worry too much about that. But it may not include absolutely everything. But here are the underlying stats, which I think personally show in some cases a really healthy WordPress ecosystem. In 2023, WordPress Core shipped 2,211 commits, which is actually slightly down from the previous year. 2,751 tickets were opened. Almost all of them closed, and 365 were reopened. 2,545 were closed. 1,079 people contributed source code, 472 of which was a first-time contribution. And I have this recollection that after the pandemic, we were all getting a bit frantic that the community was going to sort of evaporate, and maybe we're out of the sort of the dip there, because it does seem to be a little bit more positive. There are some stats here about when tickets and things are done, and oddly, it seems to follow this pattern. February's a really busy month, then it drops off to April. I don't quite know why that be. Then there's a sort of steady rise again towards the summer. Then it drops off again, and by October, we're into what looks like the busiest period. I'm guessing it's coinciding with core updates in the past year. That would be my intuition, although I can't exactly remember. Here's the countries, the list of contributions by country. As you may expect, the United States kind of dominates. Russia in second place, and not far behind, actually. Apologies. No, that was the previous year. And then it's what you may very well expect. Some of this may seem fairly normal. India has kind of doubled its contributing rate, though. And then you've got Russia, India, France, Australia, United Kingdom, Ireland. But Bangladesh coming in, 340 commits, up from 145 in the previous year. So that's quite positive. And again, this is contributors people by country. United States first, as you again might expect, but this was a bit of a surprise for me. Bangladesh comes in second place with 105 people, up from 43 the previous year. Then comes the company chart, and this looks in many ways quite similar, but Automatic at the top, 1,770. Yoast came in second place, just behind them, 10 up. I feel like I'm reading the charts. And then Who Done It? I confess I don't know who Done It are. Google, Bluehost, XWP, Human Made. How do I say that? Anybody help me? How do I say Adivs? Is it a person? I'm so sorry. Dreaming Code, Amelia Capital, which is now Yoast and Marika's sort of venture fund. Accessible WP and GoDaddy. They're the companies in that order, and that's it. That's what I've got to say about that. Did anybody want to chip in?
I'm not. I'm not sure. I'm shocked by Bangladesh.
Yeah, go on. Tell us. You had an intuition about that, didn't you?
Well, first of all, Bangladesh is a huge country. You tend to you're sort of like thinking sort of the shapes and things, and you go, "Oh, well, Bangladesh is a bit on the side of India and Pakistan," but it's not. It's a huge country with large population, and it has an education system that's very much focused on practical things. And certainly, from my experience, has been that I've often come across people engaging in open source. They've actually been part of the education system where they're told to go and do stuff and go and, if they're, it's very much a culture where it's like, if you should be contributing along and you should be learning. And so quite a lot of the higher education courses that are based around web development focus on WordPress, and consequently, a lot of the education system is go and contribute. And that, I think, is showing up. So I think a lot of that's education. That then merges into plugin teams and companies and from different places. And Nathan was saying earlier that there was a couple of large plugins that came out from Bangladesh as well. So no, it doesn't surprise me at all. If anything, I find it a little weird that the UK is showing up so highly. We always seem to do. I like to think it's the Mike Little effect. But also you've got Human Made up there as well, who are big contributors. And it's surprising that it's not a bit more balanced. We seem to have the United States and Russia, and then an awful lot of smaller countries on that list, and it's doesn't feel as disparate as it should be. I mean, you've got, of all of the ones, perhaps the most shocking is Ireland. How tiny the population of Ireland is. So whoever's putting in those 403 contributions, well done them.
It also is the only one, interestingly, I don't know if this means anything, but it's the only one which doesn't have a piece of data from last year. So I don't know if that means that they're, hot in, landing in the chart for the first time. But that's amazing. I mean, the population of Ireland is fairly small. I don't think it's...
And 70, less than 70 contributions behind the entire of the United Kingdom. Now we're feeling very poor.
Yeah.
in our showing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Thank you for that, Tim. I didn't know about the...
One last thing. You've got countries like Germany, which have a huge open source culture, right away from government all the way through, and not showing on the list at all.
I wonder if that means that they're putting their endeavours into other things, or if
Maybe.
the community there is, who knows. So thank you. I didn't know about the practical nature of the education system, but I guess that would kind of make sense, wouldn't it? If you're given projects to do and you can get hold of a free and open source piece of software gratis, and you can start fiddling with that. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Good insight. Paul, Jess, anything on this? Anything surprising, weird, interesting?
I think it's really interesting. What I've noticed on the last 12 to 18 months is the prevalence and the number of WordCamps and how well they're attended over in that side of the world. Obviously, WordCamp Asia did very well last year and is probably going to do very well this year. But maybe, I don't know whether it's just the accounts I'm following and seeing more activity, but those WordCamps seem to be really well attended. There seems to be more of them, and they seem to be doing much more at them as well. So I think where we don't have many WordCamps in the UK, and certainly not as busy as other places around the world. It's perhaps not unsurprising that we're seeing more activity from over there.
Come on, Whitley Bay, present. Yeah, that's what we got. Jess, anything to add to that?
Yeah, it was interesting to see Russia and France, specifically because the top 2 committers had 552 commits and 413 commits, which is pretty much
look at
Russia
that.
and France.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But then also, if you scroll down a little bit more, kind of on that same vein, a little more. Keep it going.
Keep it going.
Right there. Look
Bronzes.
at that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'd forgotten.
So we've got 3/4, more than 3/4 of people are not sponsored to contribute, and yet they are still giving their time to this. And interestingly enough, it is increased. So
wait, the numbers look. Oh, okay. So yeah, you're right. Again, for those people who are listening, we're staring at a chart where just under 1/4 of that contribution cycle were sponsored in some way, either by their company or through some other way of being, sponsored, contributor, sponsor, or something like that. So that means that 3/4 were not. So 233 were sponsored, 846 were not. And I guess that's just the nature of open source, isn't it? I can't really compare that to any other years because I don't really have that data.
I would love those graphs to be true.
Go on, tell us more.
I've got a horrible feeling that if we looked at the definition of the word sponsored, it would start to feel a little bit more, because we have people whose entire job is to work on WordPress Core, and they clearly see themselves as sponsored. I wonder if somebody who works at one of the major companies who did something and then just on work time and then committed it thinks of themselves as sponsored, or whether they thought that was just part of their day job, and whether the community should think that too. But I think it's hard to see that graph and not ask the question, what's sponsorship mean?
Yeah, that's
it's feature and
yeah. Do you know what though? I think the lasting thing that I get, just comparing it to the previous year, and obviously, if we were to go 5 years back and put all of the data in comparisons over 5 or 10 years, it'd be interesting to see how that worked. It kind of makes me feel much more positive than I was a couple of years ago, like I said, post-pandemic, where a lot of things really did seem to take a dip. So for whatever reason, whether it's just people getting back on the bandwagon or community events starting back up, or who knows, but it makes me feel really positive about WordPress's future again. If people are willing to put this much time and effort in, then it just makes me feel, really glad that I'm still part of this community and these people are contributing. That you can find on the make.wordpress.org site. It was on the 11th of January. Stephen Bernhardt penned that article, so you can go and peruse it at your leisure, but certainly some interesting things in there. We were speaking about events, so let's just quickly pivot to this one. Can I just say, and I said this before we hit the record button, this has got to be one of the most well-organized events out there. And I don't mean, like I don't mean like the nuts and the bolts of it. I kind of do. This event, which is the WordPress Accessibility Day, if I'm correct, it's happening in October this year. I'm sure I've got the date. I can't actually find it, but I'm pretty sure it's in October later this year. And already they're out there making it happen. It's an online event. A lot of this could be left much later, but Amber and the team behind it have decided to, really make it an important part of their lives, I guess. And so, firstly, bravo, because I know that a lot of the problems with things like this, I know from bitter experience, is just things falling through the cracks at the last minute because you're just in such a rush to complete everything. So doing it all in advance like this is just great. So I'm sure you've got some intuition as to what the WordPress Accessibility Day is. But this is to say that they're looking for an organizing team. Amber Hines posted this. I don't know if Amber is the sole person behind it. I'm not entirely sure. It does say the WP Accessibility Day board, so presumably not. But they are looking for people to make a real commitment to this event, and they need people like marketing and more or less everything that you can imagine. But they're very clear. This is also what I like. They're really clear in what their expectations are, and this is what they would like from you. And great language as well. It's not like please would you. It's like we expect, which I think is fine. At least you know what you're getting yourself in for. 2 hours a week from February right through to October. They would like you to attend bi-weekly Zoom meetings through midsummer and then weekly meetings after that. Be an active participant in their Slack channel. Be available for the actual event. So, you've got to be there for that as well. And generally be a good citizen advocating for the event and what have you. And if you have any intuitions that this may be something that you want to get involved in, there is a Zoom session taking place tomorrow. So 10 a.m. US Central Time. So that's 4 p.m. This side of the pond. And yeah, I just thought, blooming heck, I don't know what you're like, but if I was running an event like that, I reckon we'd be well into June before that page went out. So bravo to them. Anybody got any thoughts?
We were proud sponsors last year, and I will say from a sponsor perspective, the board is phenomenally organized. They do have a nonprofit established. So it is a board. It's not just Amber. Bet, another friend of the show,
yep.
Serves on the board, and Joe. But they are an absolutely incredible group of people. And I would absolutely love to take part in this again this next year. I did have a follow-up question for you, though, Nathan. I noticed that the page defaulted on light mode for you. Are you not a dark mode person?
Oh my goodness. What the heck is wrong with you?
Top right, buddy.
No. Oh, okay. Let me try it. Let me give it a go.
Just tap it. There you go. Oh, look at how much better that is.
No.
I'm light mode anyway.
Like, okay, I know I'm going to be castrated for the environmental impacts, right? But okay, let's have a show of hands. Out of the 4 panelists, let's remove it from the screen so we can see who's for dark mode, who's for light mode.
We can do multiple hands, can't we?
Yeah, no, stop that.
Yeah,
it doesn't count.
I'm voting twice.
So it's an even split, which is exactly how you'd expect it to be.
It's an age thing.
We got 8 now.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's an age thing.
I'm going to get a graphic with loads of hands on it. No, I can't do that. I tried it everywhere, and I quickly realized it wasn't for me. And that is not me being pedantic. I genuinely can consume it more easily if it's on light mode. If you were to look at my screen here, everything's light mode. And I get it from an environmental point of view. I'm heating up the pixels, right, which is not great. But
I will say I love that they have those contrast sensitivity settings on their website, and the color perception is definitely a real thing. So
are you like me, but the opposite? You actually find it easier to consume. Interesting. How does it work in sunshine? If you're on your phone and you're in sunshine, is it an improved experience or a worse experience typically?
I'll let Tim take it, but I think it's better.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I suffer from snaking, which is when individual characters or words go for a wander on the page. And so I can be reading something, and then a individual character will just drift and wander off on the page visually. And it can be sometimes it can be whole words. I find therefore I've all my life had high contrast screens. So sometimes I will overlay a purple or a orange glow tint to it to help just force my eyes to not do that. Dark mode significantly helps me in that case scenario. And I have everything set into dark mode. I also have it set with non-serif fonts for a similar reason. Just anything that will keep the words in the place that the author intended them to be.
That is absolutely fascinating. For a start, I'd never heard that term, but now, I mean, it makes perfect
You
sense.
called it sneaking?
Yeah,
snaking.
It's a dyslexic trait. It's when individual characters or words wander off the page, and it is the best way to describe it is like a snake. They slither and wander off.
So, can I ask you more questions about this? Because I'm genuinely interested. And given that we're talking about Accessibility Day, right? It's right in the purview of that. So, an individual character from within a word could exhibit this behavior.
Yes.
So, again, forgive me, right? Is it that character picks itself up and removes? So the word is now absent of that character. So if
the letter itself wanders as if it was like a bug on the screen, had just wandered off. And at that point, the word effectively shimmers, for want of a better term.
Right.
And it sort of morphs, and then the word becomes very hard to revisualize on. So if I stepped away from the screen and looked back, the word would be back in place and the character would be back.
But a simple blink, the normal amount of blinking that you do doesn't...
That wouldn't affect it. I have to be away and readjusting. And when that happens, the brain and the cognitive processing kicks in, and it often comes with a small amount of... you become tired very quickly.
Yeah.
It can be quite painful as well if you're in certain circumstances.
Do you know, I find this stuff really interesting because we live, just rewind the clock 25 years. Everybody's living in the real world and information is coming out of books. And I know that what you've just described is probably a characteristic in real books as well. Mm-hmm. And you've got those little overlays that you can put on. But now everybody is living in the digital world, and it's totally possible to do a better job of making things like you just described. Well, to remediate them a bit, I don't know if that can be removed entirely, but things can be done, like the option for dark mode, and it does feel like the whole accessibility thing in the weeks, months, years to come is going to be something that nobody can ignore. And I don't mean just because it's the moral thing to do. I mean, it's because you are literally going to be there's tripwires in the law that are going to be put in place to force you to do it if you don't wish to do it. And so there you go. The website Accessibility Day event in October could be for you. Paul, did you get a chance with this one? I forget whether we let you hop in.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I was just amazed at how many people they had just attend for a single day. Over 2,000. That's
2,158.
Right?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, isn't it? Doing God's work. So there it is. WP Accessibility.day is the URL, and it's the call for organisers. And presumably, once that little tranche of people has been filled up, we'll get some more information about the event itself.
Just as an aside on that, actually, it's the last day of call for speakers at WCEU today, isn't it? So.
Oh, okay.
I think 15th of Jan.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them a talk about why it's a good idea not to rush your talk or something like that.
Okay.
Okay, but thank you. Right, okay, this is weird. I have never organized a WordPress meetup or WordCamp or anything like that, so it's a little bit difficult for me to really get in behind this story and the impact that it may have. And again, I'm just working anecdotally of what I've heard, but I've heard that if you want to organize an official WordPress event, not a WordCamp maybe, but like a meetup, you have to go through the Meetup platform for the ticketing and, all of it, essentially. The guests come via the Meetup platform. So firstly, if that's true, Tim, can you confirm or deny that? I know that you've been involved with it.
It's so strongly encouraged that it might as well be true. I'm not actually sure it's ever written down as black and white, but you are given a Meetup account. when you become a chapter program,
Right.
which WordPress manages that, and it has a user in it, so that should the user group ever fall out of, if Meetup users, organizers say they can't do it anymore, that way the WordPress program can pass it on to the next people. So that's the argument for why they do it. Whereas if you had your own Eventbrite systems and all this, you'd be, and had your own mailing lists for the users, then it wouldn't be enclosed in that ecosystem.
Interesting. Okay, so there's maybe not an absolute tie-in, but there's a very strong hint of something equivalent to that. So then suddenly this piece of news for the WordPress community gains really significant importance, because that platform, which you may have been forgiving and thinking it was part of, I don't know, part of Automatic or something like that, because it's so bound to all the events. Well, it's not, and it's been sold. It's been acquired by a company called Bending Spoons, which is an interesting name. And Bending Spoons are a software vendor which create a variety of SaaS apps, and they've acquired it. They bought this. This is the only experience I've got with Bending Spoons. They bought Evernote, which I actually make use of. I have an account, a paid-for account on Evernote. Quite like it, but noticed that the software had pretty much stagnated. And about 8 months ago, maybe a little bit more, they acquired Evernote and released the same PR that everybody else does. Nothing will be affected. It will all be fine. And then about a month later, they fired everybody in North America. And moved all of the people over to, I believe it was Italy. Anyway, since that point, Evernote, as far as I can tell, hasn't really gone under significant change. But I'm just concerned about what this means for the community, whether there's going to be that strong relationship with events. And if it turns out that Bending Spoons are not good custodians, how difficult will it be for people running chapters to wrangle that back into their own hands and get their hands on the mailing list? And I don't know. I just have concerns when something like this happens. I've no justification for being concerned, but I think it's something we all need to be mindful of, given how deeply embedded the whole ecosystem is. So again, open to anybody, including Tim, if you've got any more to add.
Just to add that there's been over the years many attempts to say, hey, we could probably, manage to create a Meetup-like experience, and the open source community in general, not outside of WordPress. This is a thing. Meetup has been the central point, and it doesn't matter which community you join. Eventually someone says, we really should come up with an alternative for this. And over the years, there's been alternatives and they've sucked. And the thing is that Meetup sucks more, but it has this gravity of users, because it's the place that you go do this. The fact that it's rubbish is irrelevant, and it is truly a terrible experience.
Yeah, we experienced it last year, and it was terrible, and it was really painful just trying to do stuff.
And if you're a user, here to give you an example, for WordPress leads. You put in the location where you're holding your meetup, and you go, "Hi, we were in Leeds, UK," and then you get people signing up from Leeds, Alabama, and you're like, yep, you only matched the first word, didn't you? You didn't bother to match.
That's right. You've been a naughty boy.
Yeah, which end of this sequence should we have started with? Nope, we're going to go with the word at the front.
Okay,
that's a really good example. If you've ever experienced it as a user, trust me, as a admin user, it's 100 times worse. To this day, I still I get emails from occasional people going, "Hi, I want information about this meetup," and it's like, that meetup hasn't existed for ages. And I'll go in and realize that it's just sending me ghost emails from users from like 5 years ago who sent this, and it's only just now managed to reach my inbox.
Wow.
So welcome to the hell that is Meetup.
Okay, so it's potentially it wasn't the best platform, so maybe something like this will shake things up a little bit. My concern, and again, I'm not having a go at Bending Spoons, but it was a bit strange that they issued this thing about Evernote where they said nothing particularly would change, and then the next press release, which didn't come from them, by the way, I got it off regular media, was that they'd fired all the staff in North America and moved the entire workforce to somewhere else. It just made me, I don't know, it didn't give me the right kind of intuitions about that company. So whether or not we trust them, don't know.
Either way, it might move things.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah,
it's got to be worth reopening the conversation, because its current state, it really isn't fit for purpose. And I'm sure it's certainly not the only barrier, but it's one of the many barriers that are preventing local meetups from happening again. Because literally there are meetup owners and chapter who are going and trying to log in and going, I can't remember how to add a meetup. Oh, well, we won't have one this month.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it could be a barrier to entry. Should say that it's not just for WordPress. I mean, presumably it's for all sorts of anything kind of meetups, whether you're local cricket club or whatever it may be. But yeah, okay, there we go. Jess, anything on that before we crack on?
I got nothing.
Yeah, got nothing. That's fine. Okay, in that case, we will move on. We'll talk. Well, just this is a bit of a hat tip. I know that in all sorts of ways, sponsorship is an important part of the WordPress community. We mentioned that in terms of contributing to Core, but there's also some of the larger global sponsors. They put their hat into the ring and get selected, and they contribute, and it goes to all sorts of things, including WordCamps and things like that. And I'm just mentioning the 5 global sponsors at gold level for this year. There's the usual Automatic, as you may expect, is there. We've also got Bluehost and GoDaddy, who, full disclosure, are a sponsor of this podcast as well. Woo, I still can't get my head around the fact that it doesn't end in commerce. And new into the list, WP Beginner, which is a publication created by Awesome Motive. There's been a little bit of toing and froing recently about Awesome Motive, hasn't there? I think there quite often is. There's some videos going around recently and what have you. But anyway, they're the 5 global sponsors. Whatever you make of the companies individually, it's quite a big commitment. And I guess from my point of view, thanks to them for putting their hat into the ring and helping WordPress in
Was it
2024.
150 grand?
I don't know, actually.
$100,000?
Should we see if we can find that out?
At least
Details
20.
here. Let's have a look. It may not say at this point. It's $5 billion. I feel like I need to shave my hair off and so. Oh, there we go. There we go. 145.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Pocket change.
Well, I guess, you know what? I guess in some cases that may
for some of the
very
people
well,
on that list, yeah.
Yeah. Let's just go back and see what we make of that.
Companies, I should say.
Automatic, Bluehost, GoDaddy, Woo.
Well, WeGlot was on there for a couple of years, and they're not on there this year.
They're trying new things out. I was speaking to Thomas Fanchin, and they actually found it to be quite a good experience. None of this, by the way, is not public domain. We talked about it on a podcast. He was saying they're just trying out some new things. They thought it was a worthwhile experience, but they're just going to try out some new things in the year 2024. I think they've got quite a lot of really interesting ideas up their sleeve, but let's see. Okay, so there we go. They're the new global sponsors. And okay, so this isn't really news because it was in the year of the month of December last year, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. I don't know if you've got a plugin or you know of any plugin developers, but really the plugin review team, it's been a struggle, I think, since Mika left. And prior to that, even, the years that she put in, I think there was an awful lot of a volume of work which was mountainous, insurmountable. You never see the light at the end of the tunnel. But also, I think sometimes it got a little bit out of hand in terms of animosity and comments being directed at people. And, your plugin didn't get accepted. So rather than cope with that, you just fire off some incendiary email or what have you. So there's a bit of that going on. But it closed, and we should be able to hear from them soon. But I wonder what you guys think. Like, Paul, you've got a new plugin. We'll mention it in a moment. I don't know if it's going to be going into the repository or not. But is 90 days too long? Like, is that an inhibiting factor, do you think, in the WordPress space? Do we want to get this down to I think the intention is to get it almost like next week kind of thing. I don't know if they'll ever do that, but the team is growing. There's a plugin which you'll be able to use to check your own plugin. That's kind of meta. I hope that plugin works. That would be really bad. And also they're bumping up the number of people to, I believe it's 5. Yeah. So
Imagine having to wait 90 days to get for the plugin to be submitted.
that's right. Yeah. Oh, I don't know why I found that so funny. That just seems almost like a Monty Python sketch. Physician, heal thyself. Paul, carry on. Sorry.
I think we're in process of being reviewed actually, and we submitted the latest new build of our plugin in November, I think. So it's been a long time, and there's been a bit of feedback which we're addressing, and then it'll go back in. It would be nice to get somewhere 10 days. I think would be adequate. You know, that seems reasonable given that it's free. I look at what we do with other things, because obviously we do mobile work at our agency as well. So we go through the App Store review process with iOS, and we go through the review process on Android as well. Android is pretty much fully automated. It's going to check a bunch of things, you know, and then you're going to hear back whether it's okay or not. And actually, there's not a real person looking at it. App Store process on iOS is obviously not particularly transparent. And I think that's the key, really, is understanding. It's almost like wanting to be on the phone to the doctors, where it goes, you're number 3 in the queue. If you knew that would give you a little bit of insight into where you are. If you had a status, so it said, right, you're being processed or you're being reviewed at the moment, that would really help. Or if you knew what the statuses were to go through that. So I always think there's more about giving information to people. I don't think necessarily the time is a bit of an issue when it's 90 days, but if you're like aiming for 10 days, 14 days, but you tell people where they are and when they can expect it, it's much easier to be able to plan something and go, okay, well, I know there's broadly a 2-week lead time and I know where I am in this process. That would really help.
90 days is, if let's say that you're releasing it and you're releasing, I don't know, a commercial version and the free version at the same time.
Yeah.
90 days, so a quarter of a year, roughly. That is a lot of runway that you, like, if that's going to be your job, you're hoping to make that plugin your thing. That is a long time to be waiting. Well, I guess in the scenario where you wait and you're approved first time, great. But if you're waiting and in the scenario where there's just a bunch of stuff that you need to fix, I suspect that has probably turned a few developers off just at the point where they were thinking about using WordPress at all, went and did something different instead. So yeah, dragging it down. Sounds like 10 days feels about right to me as well.
Yeah, and I think it's all about agility and being able to do stuff when stuff happens. So say there was a new AI thing that came out tomorrow, and somebody
I just say there will be a new AI thing that comes out
probably
tomorrow.
Will, right? Yeah. But you're able to incorporate that into a new plugin, and you wanted to show it off, and then you go, well, actually, that's 90 days now. I can't get that into the org repository. Nobody can use it for 90 days, and by that point, you've kind of lost the moment. I think that's where it falls over.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point.
You can always get commercial and things like that, but I think it's a bit of a playground in the plugin repository for things as well, to get people get stuff in the hands of people and get them to play with it. And I think the sooner that you can do that, the better. I think if there was a way of automating some of the testing, so that you could almost pre-release something and you could put it into a beta area, so that people can play with it, knowing that it's not gone through full plugin review, maybe that would be an alternative as well.
So like they go through the plugin check, pass all the tests there.
Yeah, and then it's available for people to use, but then it's not like publicly available. If you wanted to give people a link to it to go and download it, or
like has passed the plugin review plugin tests.
Yeah, that's not easy to say.
Not approved. Yeah, it feels like somebody could have come up with a better name for that.
It's really
but I think part of the problem is people aren't doing their own checks, and so it's clogging the whole system.
Right. And this is a nice tripwire for that, isn't it? So I think the intended workflow is you'll submit something, you will then be told to use the plugin check plugin, and it will then flag all of the obvious stuff that can be automated. And I think we've got Juliet to thank for a lot of that work. And, anyway, that's another entire story which we've covered before. Please donate to her, by the way, that's all. and then if you pass that, then you can submit it into the queue. But I like the holding pattern idea. You know, like the you are fourth in the queue. That's just something a little psychologically nice about that.
You say that, but I might be dreaming it. But that used to be in place.
Okay, maybe it is still.
I think it was one of these things where the integer just got so large that it no longer.
You are 758 in the queue.
I just wanted, if anybody hasn't, Mika has been doing some brilliant blog posts on her experiences over the years.
Oh boy.
If you get a chance, go read them. I mean, anybody who's done any technical support will sort of sympathize, and then there will be the people who will just not believe, but they're all true.
Some of them actually, it can make you quite angry what had to be born in silence. I guess maybe the silence was somewhat self-imposed to keep that position the way it was, but yeah, not some of it not very nice at all. But yeah, Cameron, on the other hand, joining us, saying that he submitted several and they got approved within a week, some within 24 hours. But he said that was many years ago. Try it, Cameron. No, actually don't. That's a complete waste of people's time. Don't submit a nonsense.
A lot of plugins can be really complex now, though.
Yeah.
We're getting some really big, complex, heavy plugins that do a lot of things. They're not as simple as perhaps they used to be. I know there's still a lot of simple ones out there, and that's the point of plugins, but there's a lot more going on.
I know that this is not what we're supposed to be talking about, but on the Android side, you mentioned that was all, or at least you got the impression that it was all automated.
Yeah, it's automated
Wow,
build process.
all?
Yeah, so we CI process through to the Android store. That runs through a bunch of tests, and then it's going to come back in, 8 hours, 24 hours with you've passed all of these tests.
And does that get you into the App Store then? Or is it that point, then it goes to another level?
At that point, you can put it into a track, and then you can release into the App Store. But yes, essentially. But if you did that like with the plugin, the plugin review plugin, then you could imagine a service where you could just fire it at that.
Yeah, like a test flight, but for WordPress.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, that's what's happening during the course of 2024. The team is being expanded. There's a new plugin, and there's going to be lots more documentation, not only for you, dear developer, but also for the team members themselves, so that they can hopefully onboard people more quickly. So there's a lot of change in that department, which I think will be entirely positive. On the hosting side, a company which we've all known about for absolutely ages and ages and ages has had a bit of a rebrand. This is Kinsta.
So I've never heard of them.
No, that's right. Well, I mean, it would appear for a little bit of time recently, they were sort of putting a bit of clear blue water between themselves and WordPress, because when they came onto the scene, I could be wrong about this, but my feeling is that they were a managed WordPress host right from the very start. And that was the mantra. I think they did incredibly well. And about 18 months ago, I think they thought, well, we've grown such and such, let's push in other new directions. And so took the word WordPress out of a lot of their marketing and what have you. Maybe that hasn't worked out. Maybe something has changed, but it would appear that they've decided to have a bit of a rebrand. And the rebrand has also seen them aligning themselves much more with WordPress. So I don't know what to say, really. You were talking earlier about, so this is the perfect segue. Thank you, Tim, for giving me this. You said about snaking. I've got something going on with that design. Just there is something there which my brain does not particularly get along well with. I can't say what it is, but there's a certain sense of, ooh. So that's that's what it is. I'm not saying I have any chops or credentials to tell people how to design things, but I find that quite hard on my eye. However, all that being said, you can see front and center, we're right back into the WordPress space. So if Kinsta, your endeavor was to move away from WordPress, welcome back. If you've just rejigged it a little bit, welcome back anyway. It's nice to see that you've got back to your roots. So what do you make of that? I'm not going to put you on the spot. If you have something to say about that design, you can say it. If you just want to pass over, that's fine. I've obviously said something now and probably shouldn't have done, but yeah, I find that a little bit, it's definitely opinionated.
I would like to see the results of an eye tracker on how people view that website. Because when I look at it, I look to the left and then I look to the right.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah.
And then I almost can't go back to the middle to read the text.
Yep.
And then I go down to the bottom, and therefore I miss anything about WordPress because I'm going all the way around the core message. So, that's it for me.
Fair enough. Yeah, that was basically what I was just drawn to this. So maybe that is all it is. Maybe there's just something about those designs which sort of suck me in. But I definitely had that sort of dancing thing, and I'd never, ever, ever get something like that. But I definitely did when I saw that for the first time. Kind of like lava lamps almost. It was all just sort of like a little bit moving. It's pretty bold though, don't you reckon? From what everybody else is doing, where, a lot of white space, the typical sort of blue often that you see with SaaS apps and hosting companies and what have you. It's definitely a bold move. I'm sure it'll work out for them. But anyway, Kinsta, welcome back.
I like the use of the word modern WordPress sites. We don't want any of your legacy stuff.
No.
You go host that with some other company. We don't want to talk to you.
That's right.
Seems like a very, I feel that's like reinforcing that opinionated design with a very opinionated front message. Which will resonate with some people. They're clearly going for for a certain group of users that they're hoping to attract, and maybe that's why that design's going to work for them.
They were one of those hosting companies which they just seem to be everywhere. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. They were everywhere for a period of time, maybe like 5 years ago. They were the company that everybody talked about. If you talked about managed WordPress hosting, it was usually Kinsta, WP Engine, or at least that was my experience. And it feels like that top of mind has gone a little bit. And I wonder if that was part of what they were trying to do, reach out to. I think their strapline went more something along the lines of "We're here for your next project" or something like that. So it wasn't your next WordPress project; it was just project, and But anyway, they seem to be back in the WordPress game. So let's hope that it works out well for them. Anybody else? Jess? No, probably not Jess. Jess is
Well, honestly, I mean, they had some funding changes last year, and then they laid off a whole bunch of really good, smart WordPress people, and then they released the design. To Lawrence's point, who wrote the post that you shared, it is bold. It's cool to see somebody doing something different. But I don't know that that's the choice I would have made.
Yeah, so I forgot to raise this post, didn't I? This is actually the thing which got me thinking. It was WP Biz Dev, and as you say, it was by Lawrence, and he was talking about exactly that. First of all, the bold design, and also the fact that that it's nice to see them back talking more about WordPress. So anyway, there we go. Speaking of new things, ta-da! Personalized WP.
Now that's a pretty design.
Now, would you? Calming.
You don't need to say that just because I'm here.
I like
it's an aggressive design. It's violent. It feels like no, it's nice. But forget all that. This is personalized WP. You've managed to bag the personalized with a Z. I notice. I'm not saying anything.
And with an S, but yeah. that is the difference.
Okay. You bought the S as well. Oh,
we bought the S.
Yeah. And so this is a new endeavor or an old endeavor that you've relaunched? What is it? It's your project, right? As in you and your team.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did over COVID, we built a little plugin called WPDXP, and we just wanted to be able to show and hide content using the block editor as a little project for our developers. And then I spoke about that at WordCamp Europe in Porto. And then we carried on developing it a little, and we made it work properly, which was good. And then in Athens, we pitched to Amelia Capital for some investment to go and take this to the next level. And we got a yes. And then since then, we've done a rebrand to PersonalizeWP because we thought that what it does, what it says on the tin. But our branding, you can just about see a WP in that little squiggle.
Oh, I
end.
I got it. It's nice. Clever.
And then that phase 3. And we've been doing some updates. We've added some new features to it. And we've literally just launched this, like very soft launch last week as a paid commercial plugin, but it's obviously going into the org repository as well. So on the pricing overview page, you can see that there's a free option which allows you to have personalization rules, which we've always had in our plugin. If you just go, and then standard, we kind of have a few extra personalization rules that meet and link up and integrate with like WooCommerce and Gravity Forms and Ninja Forms. And our pro version allows you to track people around your website, build visitor profiles, segment them, and then you'll be able to do lead scoring as well. So like these are all features that we see in other CMSs that we've used in the past, because in the past we've used Sitecore, we've used Episerver and Optimizely, we've used Kentaco, we've used everything that's out there basically, and WordPress doesn't have that in core. So this is for us, it's kind of putting those features in there that we think will be useful to some people, even if you're just a hobbyist or running like a small shop, to be able to show things based on what your customers are, where they're coming from and who they are and what time of day they are, all the way up through to agencies who may not want to go and put stuff into HubSpot or those kind of SaaS-based CRMs, and can hold some of that data in there and market and target to those users as well. So we're very much at a starting point. This is new ground for us. It's very exciting. And we're kind of like in feedback and listening mode now to try and find out, what works, what doesn't work. We've got loads of lessons to learn, I'm sure. We know loads of WordPress product people around the community. But we do have Yoast and Mariki that are helping us along the way, which is a great resource to have.
Yeah, that's nice. Can I ask you a random question? How many hours did it take you to decide to use the word standard for that? Because I've always thought that's a really, like, what is the word that encompasses the least one, if you know what I mean? Like, do you call it basic? Do you call it standard? Do you just call it, I don't know. And I always think that's because you don't ever want to imply that it's
less
standard, if you know what I mean. You want to you imply that it's great, but not not quite as great.
It's all right.
It's
all right.
Yeah, that would be great. The all right version.
It's
not bad.
Fair.
Yeah,
it's not what you could have won.
It's a reasonable plugin.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I think, do you know what? Actually, it's really hard. If you scroll down a bit, there's like a little one of those little things that goes, this is what you're going to get in all of these things, right? And actually, just even doing that was a great challenge for us to try and work out, okay, what are you going to get? But quite to do it for the first time and then come up with stuff. And that went through several variations before we got to where we wanted to be. And I'm sure it's going to change and adapt with time. And that's the most important thing, is just to take the lessons on and be adaptable and be agile in terms of what we're delivering.
I've got one more thing, just a quick typo.
Oh my God.
That one.
No, actually, no, Nathan, it's correct.
I know. I just
technically.
Technically, you're absolutely right.
Thanks, Jess.
Yeah,
it's correct. But I have a question for you, Paul.
Go.
Yeah.
Are you scared to launch something like this with so much focus on, as you say, privacy?
No, because this is all first-party data, right, rather than third-party data necessarily. So it's actually quite beneficial to people running this plugin on their own site, that they don't need to go and put the data somewhere else. They're not going to offsite it somewhere else. And particularly when we look at the enterprise space as well, it's having control of your own data is probably the most important thing. But it's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, that is interesting, because that is one of the big things. Well, it's just one of the big stories of the last few years, isn't it? Data and where it's held and how it's going across oceans and getting used and sold and what have you. So this is all the data that this plugin generates is being held within the WordPress database. I suppose that brings other questions to mind, but
yeah, no, of course. And we know from working with clients on the agency side that not all clients want that data in their WordPress database. So we will be developing a way to offsite that data if you're of that mind. But for many users, it's not necessarily the thing that they need to be worried about as long as their hosting is secure.
So it's a trigger action mentality. It's like set up a thing which happens on the website, then decide what will happen as a result of that. So I don't know, if you scroll a certain amount, do this. If you leave the browser viewport, do this.
So
that kind of thing.
It is. But you can get a lot more complicated than that very quickly. So you can, if somebody fills in a form or goes to a certain page, you can put them into a segment, or you could give them a lead score. You could give them a value for an action that they've taken. And then you could segment by lead scores. You can segment by people that have bought a particular product, but have filled in that data. When you've got that visitor profile set up, you can see all of their actions on the site that they've taken previously. You can move them from anonymous to known. And then in the block editor, you can choose whether somebody sees a piece of content based on how they match those rules. So is this show this piece of content if this person's from the UK and they exist in this segment where they've already filled in a form and their lead score is above 30, show them a promotional message with an offer, kind of thing.
You've got, I can imagine you've got a journey ahead of you with blog posts and what have you, spelling out what's possible. You know, there's a lot of work when you've got a plugin where it's so open-ended like that you can do what you like. I think one of the hardest things is to actually educate the audience as to what's possible or the different things that you can do with it. Because my intuition would be that a lot of people will not really understand its true power. So welcome to the blogosphere.
Thanks, mate. Keeping it simple, but it's giving the power to the agencies really to be able to go and do things for their clients. So that's probably one of our core.
Does it have lots of actions and filters hooked in so that you can expand it and put your own integrations in, or are you tightly controlling those at the moment?
Yeah, no, they're all pretty tightly controlled at the moment, but we will be expanding and doing that. So what we wanted to do is get to a point where it's got enough features to be worthwhile. Then we've got the roadmap for the rest of this year, and we've got development resource for the rest of this year booked in to work on it continually. So it's a long-term thing. It's not, we're starting at day zero, I call it right now.
So and you're in the wasn't an AI thing. I'll be honest. I was looking at it going, oh, please don't be an AI thing. Please don't be. Oh, it's actually something sensible and usable.
There's no AI inside.
Practical.
There's going to be a bit of AI in the future, but only for like things like
you took some
content recommendations.
AI in it.
Right. Yeah.
It's this year. I don't know I don't know about you, but I am so sick of getting an email with the words AI in the title. It's almost now a flag for me to just delete it. It's so ridiculous how everything's been crowbarred with AI. You can buy a kettle with AI in it. I don't want a kettle with AI in it. I want a Switch, and that's all.
I've just had that discussion with my wife about washing machines this morning. Where there's like a Wi-Fi enabled washing machine that can auto dose your washing. She's like, I don't want that. I just want to put a thing in and then press a switch. I know what I'm doing with that.
I think we overcomplicate things, don't we? And the idea of an AI enabled fridge or whatever it may be, I think it's fun, right? The nerd in me loves it. And I would love to go to somebody's house and tinker with somebody that's got it. But for me, it's more like, I don't want that. That's going to break in so many ways that I don't understand how to fix.
I can't fix it.
When it goes wrong, I need the $1,000 an hour mechanic to come with his laptop. Anyway, congratulations on getting this shipped. It's a nice achievement to begin the year.
Thank you.
2024. And it'd be really nice to see how it goes.
I want to point out I have a team that do wonderful things, and barely any of this is me. It's all them, and they do all the hard work. And actually, if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't be there. So
well, thank you for bringing it to the attention of our audience. We'll see. So PersonalizeWP.com with an S or Z, doesn't matter.
With an S or Z.
With an S is fine, but it's going to default to the wrong one. But that's fine.
Like this is the British in us, right? It's like it doesn't look right, but to the rest of the world,
it does. Demo your plugin, demonstrating that when you go to the one with the S, It
Yes.
identifies the correct language and
Yes.
corrects everything for us.
That has occurred to me. And now we've shipped and we can work on less important things. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jess, what do you think? S or Z? Would you feel weird if you saw an S? Would you think it's misspelled?
No, I would just think you're either, British or Canadian.
Oh, do the Canadians use S as well?
Sometimes
Yeah.
they do the U in color.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Good on them. Good
We've
on
got,
them.
we've got a few people in the comments who are Canadian, so let's see if got anything to add to that bombshell. Elliot Sowersby's. We had a few comments about Kinsta. Broadly, like the design was interesting. Let's just put it that way. And then Elliot says the plugin looks great. I'll give it a try. I can think of
Thank
one.
you, Elliot.
You may find it useful too. Paul, we made you one sale already. Boom!
Thank you very much.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Oh,
This is the power of WP build. Huge.
Red hot. But there we go. Brilliant. And thank you for bringing it to our attention. So this may not excite you even a bit, but okay, rewind. It's not often that I watch something on YouTube and I actually have to like pause and go, wait, what just happened? And I'm talking about WordPressy stuff. But I watched a video just before Christmas with a chap called Pascal Birchler. And I had no understanding of who he was. He was just absolutely new, but somebody had retweeted something or something like that. And I watched this little video and it was immediately like, how the heck has he done that? Because what he did was he took a JPEG from his Mac and he chucked it into the block editor, and his computer wasn't connected to the internet, and it converted itself into WebP or an AVIF or whatever it might be, and it was all done inside the block editor, and he explained it all, and it obviously all made great common sense. But it just struck me as a really interesting application of leveraging the tools that are actually built inside the browser that I basically didn't know existed. So a lot of this conversion of images can be done if you add various bits and pieces in. But he also then went on to demonstrate live captioning, again, inside the browser. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I feel that he's onto something. And he thinks that he's onto something as well. So really just listen to the podcast. It's on the WP Tavern. It's episode number 105. And I think some of this stuff could go into Core, not with all the bells and whistles and transcribing videos in real time, but the ability to select somewhere in the back end and say, can I just have every image as a WebP, please? No matter what I throw at it, can it always just go into a WebP? And it doesn't have to phone it out to an external service or anything like that. It all just happens on the fly seamlessly. So anyway, hat tip to Pascal. I thought it was pretty remarkable, and I know he's been really pleased with the reaction that he got. So anyway, maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it's just something that you do on a daily basis, But I'd never seen it before. So over to you. Did you? Was that an amazing thought, or was that just like, yeah, duh, Nathan, shut up?
WebAssembly is fantastic.
There you go.
There you go. WebAssembly is fantastic. Very soon, you'll be able to get your own personalized Bitcoin miner. In fact, you already can get a Bitcoin miner sitting in WebAssembly.
Can it be done with AI, though?
That gets hacked in even slightly could permanently be mining off your browser, because WebAssembly is wonderful.
Yeah. Well, again, you're 100 and 1,000 times more technical than I am. I didn't know that the WebAssembly technology could be leveraged to do those kind of tasks, and just seeing it happen inside the block editor. Whereas the only services I've come against are go into the media library, have some sort of plugin installed, you put it into the media library, and you wait. Something happens in the background mysteriously, and you don't quite know what's happened. This will do all of that before you've even saved the post. It's just happening right inside the post. So I thought it was remarkably clever. And I think something like that could be in Core. We talked about accessibility and switching things on and off. And I think that in the future, it's not really accessibility, but the idea of saving bits flying across the internet, if you can cut down by 40% a JPEG into a WebP format, and it can all be done automatically by ticking a box in a setting somewhere, that kind of feels like we're into the territory of Core. maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's not for everybody, but yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
everybody's got enough power in their laptops these days to be able to cope with all this stuff, right? So,
right.
you know, the late, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have Macs, but you know, the processing power of those are absolutely ridiculous, and I don't use it anywhere near its capacity. But I think the important thing is patchy internet. And when you don't have internet, being able to work offline, because there's so many things these days where it's a bit of a struggle to work offline. Actually, it's like when your internet goes down, and then you're like, I'm going to take the afternoon off work because your internet's gone down. It's like I could just work locally, but it just feels like you can't anymore. It's like if your internet's not there, that's it. Half a day off.
He also introduced this thing. He uses a library called Blur Hash, which I'd never heard of before. And so it's kind of like a bit like lazy loading, but if an image is loading, he's got a saved copy of it, which has taken a representation. You know, when you look at if you squint your eyes on an image, you get an impression of what's in there. So he uses CSS to replace the image whilst it's lazy loading with something that is kind of like what's going to come. So in my case, it would be this pasty white circle in the middle, and then, you know, something getting a little bit lighter towards the edges, but you get the impression. But also it means that you don't get any of that cumulative layout shift because he's already inserted something into the page which is the same height and width, but it's, you know, a couple of kilobytes of CSS. And again, I just think he's quite clever, basically. It's very cool. So anyway, go and check that out. That was on the WP Tavern number 105, and there's his videos on Twitter. There's a couple of them, but I linked to them.
I can actually recreate that effect just by taking my glasses off and then putting them back on again. That's the same as your CSS.
Yeah, I could do that.
It's like, oh, everything's blurry. Right, let's see a bit. That's
brilliant. Yeah, I've become that person who does this when I'm reading things, and it's it's a fairly recent development for me, having to wear glasses. And I went the other day and got an upgrade, as it were, or a downgrade. I don't know what the language is, but my eyes are definitely not getting any better. I blame it all on the screens.
Yeah.
Okay, right. A couple of bits and pieces just before we finish off. Firstly, to say that I did a different podcast with James Giroux. We talked about teams in the WordPress space, and he has recently conducted this thing called the Teams Experience Index. If you're part of a team, much like Paul is and Jess is, might be of interest to you. And he's taking the temperature of what teams are doing well and how they think they're doing, and it's quite interesting actually. It sounds like there wouldn't be a lot of data points, but he's gathered a lot of data, and it is quite interesting to see what can be done better. And you might be able to look at it and say, oh, actually, we hadn't even thought of that in our team. And anyway, go and check that out. That's
do you need to be showing your screen?
Oh, darn. Yeah, I should be showing my screen. Look there.
There you go.
Oh, I was squinting. That was the problem. So that's the episode. It's all in audio, so there's not a fat lot to see. Okie dokie. Right, I've put this one in here. I don't know if Tim has. I don't know if Tim's got anything he wants to say, but I threw this in. It's the Solid WP Security Vulnerability Report for the last period of time. So Tim, just across your bows, anything we need to be scared of that's happened in the recent past? Give us the state of WordPress security of the recent past.
Plugins become vulnerable, themes become vulnerable. Everything is bad. We're all doomed. You should just abandon all hope. Yeah, just all the usual advice, which is update. Keeping things up to date has always been the advice that's been given, and it's getting more important. The thing that this vulnerability report doesn't show and you don't hear about is the time between exploitation is getting shorter and shorter. So basically, when a vulnerability is released, the time before it's being actively exploited is getting shorter. We used to measure these things in weeks, and in some cases months. And so patching once a month was a perfectly reasonable thing to do a few years ago. And then patching once a week was a perfectly reasonable thing to do a year or two ago. And then last year, patching every couple of days was reasonable. We are getting to a state where we're talking hours. And so if you're not automatically doing updates, you need to have a different strategy, and you need to get on that bandwagon, because if you're sitting there thinking, well, we do updates once a week, that's no longer good enough. And your site, and the number of people who said, well, I haven't been hacked yet.
Oh,
Well, you might have been. They're just very
You're just
good now.
playing a game with a really, really
Oh,
bad game.
never say that out loud. Never.
Yeah. So Tim, at the beginning, his bio said professional Doom speaker. There you are. There you go. Heard it.
Just please turn on if you're tried turning on automatic updates. Honestly, you're in a much better state with them on than you are with them off. There are plenty of tools. There are plenty of people who can help you. But yeah, don't sit there and go, yeah, we update once. If you're the sort of person who says we update once a month and it's all been fine, this year is going to bite you hard.
Right. Okay. I first of all, thanks, Rob. Tim Doom or Doom, something like that. A long comment. Secondly, right, and I don't mean to get into this because I think we talk too much about AI. Presumably, AI is going to be a significant piece of the security landscape in 2024 because although it's fun creating blog posts, I'm guessing that you could also simply ask a piece of AI to, I don't know, modify something that was usable last week, which had been sort of cut off by a plugin developer or something. Go and search the repo, look for vulnerabilities, all of that. You get the idea. Is AI being used to create
AI is used
stuff?
by developers. Plenty of developers are now using Copilot or Codium or any one of the many AI tools. You're going to shock people, but bad actors use the same tools and have the same capabilities. So I'm not sure the AI threat is any greater in that respect. AI will have some benefits, some negatives, but everything's getting faster. And that's the key for where we talk about AI and people talk about job losses and all that stuff. What they're actually, when you get to the root down, what would have taken a developer maybe a couple of hours now takes them a couple of seconds. And they don't necessarily need to go through that many passes to get something that's plausible. If that's the case for an average developer, then that's going to be the same for a bad actor. Yeah. So everything is just getting faster.
Can I just say, not everything's getting faster. I'm not getting faster. I feel significantly slower this year already. So, you can attack my websites because...
But you keep them all up to date automatically.
I do keep them all up to date.
Fine.
You know what? I do tend to do it on a daily basis. And you've just given me pause for thought. I either need to do that on a more like twice a day or just put everything over to auto update because the consequences of something updating badly, at least that's a known consequence.
Yeah. You are my friend and I don't wish you to be hit by buses. But Thanks. The last thing is I don't want to be coming to visit you in hospital and me sitting there with your grapes and saying, oh, by the way, your website got hacked because you didn't update. You got hit by the bus. But here you have some grapes.
Double whammy. Yeah. Oh, okay. So anyway, there you go. You heard it here first. You didn't.
I do have a point about that, though. I just want to query Tim, because we seeing contracts and expectations from clients sometimes that they will want us to run a manual update process. And that takes time to go through that test every time that there's an update. And the frequency of updates for plugins are becoming faster and faster and faster and faster. And a number of the updates that we do or see are version bump or, little fix, little change in the feature that's going to fix something. I don't know if there's a middle ground there. We have a lot of automatic updates on, we have a lot of staged updates on and things like that as well. But trying to deal with that problem of going, you need to do it.
It's painful. And especially as we don't have a nice tracked system. A lot of other software you'd have it mentioned, hey, this is a security vulnerability. It's on a separate track. It's a separate patched system. And so you could just subscribe to the security track.
Yeah.
We don't have that in the WordPress space, unfortunately. I think if it's written into a contract, you should manually update our website. That sounds like there's a disconnect between client reality, contracts, etc. But you can get halfway house. So at least you can automate the testing.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing I say to everybody. If you're going to come through and do automation, you start with the testing. So you start with, okay, what do you want us to what should we test? We make sure that the process is really hammered out. Convert those into automated tests. At least then doing an update is only taking minutes, not hours or days. So we can speed that process up. And once we're happy that the automated tests are passed all the time, that's the time to go back to the client and say, well, actually, you're paying us this amount of money for us to slow the process down.
Yeah, that's a good.
You're going to pay us exactly the same amount because we're going to keep writing these tests for you, and we're going to make the process better. I think the problem is that most people don't think the automatic process is better. They somehow think a human pressing the button is better.
Yeah. They worry that
part of that's because agencies have told them that's the case. When an agency sells their processes, they sell that as a selling feature. And good agencies are the one you finding like yourselves where you've got the mixture. You can slowly but surely then bring that into the fully automated and sell that as a selling point in itself. That look, we write tests. That's where our skill set comes in. Our skill set is making sure that things don't break, and when they do break, we can fix them quickly. We are not, however, hired to press a button.
Yeah. I'm so good at pressing buttons. Can somebody hire me to press buttons? I'll do that.
It's interesting though. It's like a step change with some companies to go to a more agile way of working, where they may have been used to more on-prem systems or static systems that have a release cycle where it's like 3 months you're going to get your security update for the 3 months, and you're going to go through that release, patch, and test. Sorry, you do it the other way around: patch, test, and release, not release first.
Release, hot fix, panic,
run.
Yeah, roll back. But I'm very much into CI and getting stuff out there as quickly as possible. And if it breaks, fix it as quickly as possible and get a new one out, rather than don't really like rollbacks. And it's trying to find that happy ground, really, I think, with clients that have significant uptime and SLAs, and just have these expectations or have these. It generally comes from somebody in IT or legal have come down the road and they say, "Oh, we want this," and then it's like trying to show them. It's not necessarily the best.
When they have an SLA, it makes it easier because you can basically say, we can up the SLA because we're doing the updates automatically.
Yeah.
So you can almost use the SLAs against them
until the update breaks it, because it's an automated update, right? So they've got released last week.
Rollbacks and all the things. As long as the automation's working properly, you should be instantaneous on the rollback, and you should be checking for these conflicts and the testing at that scale. For your average person, just setting automatic updates and leaving them.
Do it.
If your website's down for an hour, it's not the end of the world. Where we're talking about uptimes of 99.9999, we need to build good tooling. But that's what you pay the agency to do. That's what you pay you to do. And that's where you really make your money, which is good because that keeps agencies in business.
I like that. I like what Tim said there. That's like turning a glass that was half empty into a glass which was half full. That was a terrible analogy. It was something adjacent to that anyway. But yeah, either that, Paul, or just run them over with a boss.
No, that's it.
I mean,
you nailed
it. Tim will bring the grapes and rescue the situation. It'll all be good.
Gone down as he puts a grape in your mouth.
That's right. Your site's gone down, but I know you're losing £1,000 a minute, but as a consolation, have a grape. It's all fine.
Seedless.
Very quickly, State of OpenCon 24 is going to be happening in London this year, February 6th to the 7th. Don't know if that's of interest to anybody, but it's obviously open source more than just WordPress. And I'm going to make this the last one. Who we were talking about accessibility. Who honestly, who doesn't want an accessible fart machine? Watch the video. It is so genuinely lovely. It is not about making farting noises. It is. But it is also about empowering, in this case, children who, let's face it, every kid enjoys a fart noise. The video is about empowering children with technology to be able to do that joke that every kid wants to do. And it's lovely. Somebody building the technology so that you can fart. How fabulous. And that's where we're going to end it. There's no finer way to come to an end than the fart. So that's it.
Accessible fart.
Yeah, an accessible fart, which is I think where we all want to go in 2024.
What is an accessible fart? Is it like
so? Literally, they built an Arduino.
No, I know that, but just conceptually, what does an accessible fart mean? Is there such a thing as an accessible
for all?
fart?
Yes,
I
think it's got to be loud and very small, so that we can all.
Everyone is welcome to this fart.
Oh, it's gone so south.
You could all walk into this fart.
Oh, the hole has been dug, and now we're shoveling more out of it. That's it. That's all.
If you're shoveling it, it's no longer a fart.
Again, Tim with the unfortunate fact.
That's right. It descends into chaos as it usually does. Thank you so much to the 3 participants. We've got Paul Halfpenny, we've got Tim Nash, and we've got the co-host. Got it right, Jess Frick. Thank you to those of you that made the time to come here and do this live. I really appreciate that. Quite a lot of comments. I'm sorry we didn't get to quite a lot of them. And Jess is like itching, like, where's the hands? Where
I'm
are the hands?
I'm working out.
Everybody get the hands out. Come on, Tim, hold out. Yeah, yes, there they are. Oh, that's brilliant. I had somebody on Twitter the other day, like, what's with the hands? And I said, it's funny. And they didn't think it was funny.
It's
and
tradition.
I ran them over with a bus, but I didn't bring the grapes. Okay, that's it. That's all we've got. I know.
Always take the grapes.
Yeah, always take the grapes. Always take the grapes. That is all that we've got time for this week. If the graphic works and we get 10 seconds holding banner, great. If not, I'll see you guys in a few seconds' time. But thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Take it easy. See you next week.